Thank you for joining all of us. Welcome. You have joined the webinar for how to maximize customer value with digital onboarding. I'm Anthony Dioria, industry principal at Valuize, and I am joined by Harris Clarke from GUIDEcx COO. Harris, I'll let you do an introduction to yourself as well.
Thanks, Tony. Great to be with you, and I really appreciate the time that everyone's taking to join us here. My name is Harris Clarke, Chief Operating Officer at GUIDEcx COO. We started the company wanting to help people work better together and create some digital opportunities that could really maximize the value you deliver in that new customer onboarding experience that could benefit everyone. So not just your touch customers, but everyone that you work with. So this is a topic I'm passionate about and leapt at the chance to talk about when the Valuize team reached out.
Yeah, absolutely. We're big fans of GUIDEcx COO and big fans of all things digital. And the onboarding process is such an important piece, that implementation point. And I know we're going to talk about that as we get through the deck and have some examples of just why it's so critical and so valuable. So for those of you who are not familiar with Valuize on the call, we are a B2B technology B2B consulting agency that works with different technology companies to help them retain and expand revenue at scale. We are focused very much on helping customers achieve best-in-class net dollar retention. We focus on the outcomes of impact, efficiency, and scale, and work with some of the largest enterprise B2B companies in the world, like Workday, Splunk, VMware, HashiCorp, Vertex, lots of companies within our portfolio. And within our capabilities, we focus on 4 key things here, and that's really setting up a CS charter or creating a vision across the business on what customer value looks like and how to achieve that across the customer life cycle. We then start to build out strategies. So what are those strategies that the organization needs to employ to be able to execute that vision and that journey at scale? And then we look at technology and data. And so how does this strategy, how do these processes then operationalize in technology? Things like GUIDEcx COO, things like Gainsight, what does that really look like? How can the technology support that process? And then the organization overall. So what does the organization need to look like to be able to support this? What are the roles that need to be in place? What are the strategies that might be outside of technology and customer facing that need to support that? What is the measurement, et cetera, all of that. So we really work end to end across the customer life cycle, making sure that you can drive value with your customers and ensure that great revenue retention. For the agenda today, we've got 4 key items that we're going to focus on. Creating a customer-centric experience and what that looks like, how to optimize efficiency of that onboarding program, creating a tailored onboarding experience, and turning poor experiences into positive moments. And again, focusing a lot on onboarding and implementation today and how digital really surrounds that and helps you really be on the cutting edge. So we're going to start with a poll question. Rita's going to pop that up on your screens shortly. So we're interested to hear, just as a starting point, do you use digital tools during the customer onboarding process today? And we've got a couple options in there on where you might be in your journey. We'll pause for about 30 seconds.
It's saying I can't vote as a presenter.
Same. I think we know how you'd vote, though.
Yeah, I think you do too. While everyone's voting on this, let me just say, that slide that you went through earlier on what Valuize does. I know that the goal here isn't to plug Valuize services, but I was in consulting for a long time. I feel like, what I see there is we've all got kind of that list of things that we know we have to do or that we know we should be doing, right? Like you kind of keep that list in the back. You're like, oh man, we should be doing this a little bit differently, whether it's part of our customer experience or part of our internal just kind of business management and business rules. And I love the idea of, just being able to take that full customer vision and help operationalize it, because sometimes that's just exactly what you need.
Yeah, just popping this back up for a question in the channel. And hi, Hope. It's good to see you. All right, so we've got our
Okay,
answers
results are
here.
in.
Votes are in. We've got 24% saying we have a defined strategy leveraging digital touchpoints. Fantastic.
That's awesome.
48% somewhat. We have digital touchpoints, but they're ad hoc. 16% nope, but we're in the process of setting them up. And 12% no, we're not there yet. So that's great because I think we've got something in this webinar today for everybody. And please, uh, keep the questions going in the chat. We would love to hear from you and your experiences. And when we get towards that Q&A portion at the end, not only do we want to hear the questions you've got, but tell us some things about what you're doing well, because clearly we've got some people who are
Yeah.
doing some good stuff. All right, so we're going to kick things off with why value matters. So in most B2B technology companies, customer value realization is a corporate priority, but not really that customer mindset. It's a milestone in the journey. So thinking about value at a point in time, but really thinking about that as owned by a single function. It's not really operationalized through technology and data, and it's lacking that clear and agreed upon definition of what measurable value for a customer actually is. And so the existence of this reality puts the complication in place that NDR is going to be at risk if you don't have these things woven together in a way that is cohesive and that is bought in by the entire organization. So needing to build that priority at the top, having those milestones that are covered throughout, which is one of the things that we're really going to be focusing on today, and having data and technology support that as well. So you can make those intelligent decisions. You're able to operationalize digitally based on those data inputs. And then again, really starting at the beginning of that and starting from the top is having that clear, agreed definition of what measurable value is for the customer. And that's really going to underpin the way that you are able to onboard and successfully implement a customer, right? Because if you don't know what value is for them, if you don't know what they're trying to achieve, then it's going to be really difficult for you to set the tool up, get the right features and functions, get the right enablement going. Really going to be a challenge to be able to then get to that renewal and say, did you get value? A lot of the times the answer is going to be no. I don't know, Harris, if you wanted to jump in with anything there.
Yeah, I'm sure you could tell I was champing at the bit there. I think another thing that's really unique in B2B that we all need to be aware of is that value prop that your company hopefully can come to an understanding of the value that your customers get is also tends to be different for the personas at your company, right? So the value for your executive sponsor who signed the contract, who may have the right of refusal on renewal, is going to be a little bit different than the value for the kind of program manager who's responsible day to day for making sure that things are running the way they should. And even that value could be different from the folks on the front line, right, who are using the tool every day or benefiting from the services you offer every day. So I don't say that to try to, overcomplicate it, but I think it's an important realization that we should not take for granted that, how do we define value for each one of those stakeholders in our process?
I absolutely agree. And I think that is very present or has been extremely present in the past 3 years and even changing a little bit more now. I'm sure many of you on the call can relate to the fact that, and the example I use a lot, and a lot of my background is in marketing technology in CS. But you're renewing with the CMO, you're renewing with the director of marketing. But in the times that we're in, the way the market looks, during COVID, that's changing, and what that value means to that CMO is not going to mean the same thing to potentially the CFO. And what we see a lot of is that ownership of the renewal, the decision making of that renewal is changing hands. So you need to be able to pivot on what that value is and what value is going to mean to that different persona. And that is happening a lot in the marketplace today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So just continuing on that, and this very much aligns with what we were just really saying here, is that customer value realization and product usage are two things that really interact with each other, and making sure that you have the product set up so that the customer is going to be able to achieve that value. We also talk about things like product-led growth here, but really making sure, again, that when you are thinking about what is going to drive value for a customer, what are those features and functions that are going to support that? How are you going to get them to adopt the product? And at Valuize, we like to talk about adoption of the product as using something because you are choosing to use that because it's helpful and making things easier for you in your role, and not using things because you are told to use them. So that adoption, being able to flip that switch to I am choosing to use GUIDEcx because GUIDEcx takes some of the weight off of me from an administrative standpoint by operationalizing many of my tasks, but also engaging with my customers in a more proactive way. So I am choosing to use this product because it means that I am more successful in the implementations that I lead. For example, a little bit of a plug for you there.
Yeah. Thanks, Tony. And I think it's a great point and distinction to make, because it's a good magnifying glass for where you may need to fill in some gaps, right? I've seen it both ways here at Guide, where talk to a customer and it's a frontline user who loves the tool because it makes a big difference for them every day. I've also seen it where it's a tool, hey, we've been told that we've got to use this, so we're trying to figure out how to fit it into our workflows. We could use training, we could use help, we could use some enablement on this. That's obviously a quick sign to me. Okay, hey, we need to get better resources for this team, so that they can feel the same value that their counterparts are feeling at other companies.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so pulling this into, what does that customer-centric experience look like? I've got a slide here on the customer journey. I'm sure you are all familiar with what a customer journey is, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this one, but really making sure that it is cross-functional. It has that set of defined steps. It's empathetic, and I know we're going to talk a lot about that in the upcoming slides as well, but that it's also prescriptive, repeatable, and an approach to driving value. And I'm going to talk about this in the next couple of slides as I build a little bit of a story here. So when you think of a customer journey, you've got this road here. Some of your customers are going to find a way to that value, to that point of saying, yes, this product has delivered on the reason why we bought it. It has made things better for us. We have achieved this goal. Some customers are going to be able to get there. Some maybe because it is a natural fit for them. Some because they have used your product in the past at a different organization, or they're just familiar with the industry and the kind of product it is. So they're going to get there on their own. But many are not capable of charting that path themselves. And so as you can see in this image here, they're very basic images, but you can see the car is not really making it to that point because they don't know how to get there. So you as an organization need to be able to help chart that path for them. This is a lot of what we're going to be talking about today when we think about onboarding and the digital path that they go on. So even with the right tools, so even when you think of those things like, all right, we've got education points, we've got check-ins with their CSM or their implementation partner, we've got education that they can go self-serve and things like that. But if it's just all there, right, it's just at their fingertips in a pile, the efforts are really just noise, right? Like, what order do they do them in? What should I actually be consuming? What is noise? What is junk? So when you take that, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to mention, and right on this slide, right? Like, I think we all have the best intentions internally, right? And everything you just mentioned there, that, well, these are things we're doing to enable and empower our customers. But do we have the right transparency to show them where they are on the path, to help them see what's coming next, to help them see where they've been? Because those are the things that get you excited about going to that next phase.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you get to that level of maturity within the organization, you are looking at this charted path with all of those tools, but those tools in a way that is logical, that is helpful, that makes sense, with value checkpoints along the way as well. So this is a combination of human, this is a combination of digital, but it's also a combination of understanding based on the product, what does good look like at each point? What does value look like at those points to get to that point of finally achieving that overall value outcome? So I'm going to go over 3 quick slides, I think it's 3, on how to do this. So very high level, happy to continue this conversation at a later time as well, but using internal knowledge to create that shared understanding of the customers. So, when you talk to product marketing, sales, who are our customers? What does that journey need to look like? What is adoption? So charting that out, mapping that out, identifying that, validating that by conducting research. So talking to customers, talking internally to those who are on the front line, that is important. Doing some market research, understanding what is that product fit, and does that validate the assumptions that you've got. Then sharing those across the organization. So making sure that there is buy-in, there is education, everybody is in agreement, you are enabling that way, and you are talking to the market that way as well, in the way marketing does that, in the way sales does that when they sell, and the way CS does that as they manage that relationship. And then operationalize through standard processes, and then put that into tools to automate. Now, you may not have the tools at the time, so you can certainly do this without, but tools are, in my opinion, and I know that's going to be a big theme on here, is tools being a really critical piece of that. But certainly these things can be done with a leaner tech stack. All right, so we're going to do one more poll question focused on that customer journey. Does your organization have a defined customer journey? I think we've got some answers there to kind of give you everybody should find a place to fit within that, but would love to hear from you.
I'm going to tell a story in the background while people are answering that.
Yeah,
Everyone probably knows the Domino's pizza tracker. Whether or not you've ordered pizza with Domino's, you're probably aware that they have this thing where every stage of like between when you order and when you get your pizza, they've kind of got updates for you, and they'll send them either to your phone or your email or whatever. That came from a lot of what Tony just talked about. So internally, they had this process, but it was kind of all over the place. Different team members understood what was happening. They actually had the pizza tracker that was on their back end, so they understood where things were in the process. But then they were working with an agency, I believe it was an ad agency, who was trying to help them like refine their brand. And they came across this and they said, whoa, you should kind of tidy this up and make it customer facing. So they put that together kind of in a really neat package. And now all of a sudden, every customer knows when the toppings are going on, when it's in the oven, and when it's being driven over. And it's changed the way consumers engage with Domino's for the better.
Yeah, I love that thing. That gives me, do I have time to go walk the dog before the pizza gets
Right.
here?
Yeah.
Or is that happening after I eat
Yeah.
the pizza? So cool. So we've got a lot of responses here. So about 30% saying, yes, we have defined this end to end. Fantastic. 44% saying, yes, we've got this defined post sale, but it's high level. 22% no, but we're in the process of setting one up, and 4% with no. So sounds like there's a good level of maturity here. Love to see that. And so as we go through the next piece, when we get into, again, the Q&A, would love to hear a little bit about what's working for you and how this digital component of that, especially when we're looking at onboarding and implementation, how that aligns with your journey, and how that fits in. Cool. You're going to be hearing less from me in a couple slides, but now we're going to kick into incorporating digital and human-led strategies to optimize onboarding efficiencies. So got this one graphic here for digital strategies at scale, and that's when you think of that integrated customer campaign, there's a lot of components in that. So often when people talk about digital, or digital implementation, or if you're a Gainsight customer journey orchestrator and thinking about digital being very similar to what you see on the marketing side of the business, or what you think of from a campaign execution standpoint. And it's more than just that demand gen kind of use case. You really are thinking about how you are going outbound, how you are serving in that way, how you are servicing inbound through things like support and knowledge base, same with how-to documentation, how you're leveraging marketing and thought leadership and including that in outbound demand gen activities, but also that inbound component. And then external, so what's going on with events? Are you appearing at trade shows? Do you have a booth? What are your entire organization is out in the field in some capacity. So how are they talking about your business as well? So really thinking again about when you look at digital, it is not just this one linear journey and campaign. You are following that and you are driving people down that, but there are going to be other points that come in. And you need to be conscious of those as well. So leveraging these types of things, community, knowledge base, super important to think about with that digital strategy. Digital strategy is way more than just how we send out emails to let people know that we've got a product release or that the renewal might be coming up. Those are big, important parts, but they are not all that are inclusive. So Harris, I'm going to kick it over to you to go through the next couple of slides. Just give me a prompt when you want me to move along, and let's get going.
Okay. One question for you, just as I kind of teeing up these slides here. So talk about those digital strategies. In the work you're doing with customers, are you seeing, I feel like it used to be the case where there was almost this strict bifurcation between customers that get digital strategies like tech touch and customers that don't, where it's all handheld. Are you seeing any change in that, or are you still seeing a pretty strong separation between where the digital strategies are implied?
Yeah, I would say there may still be a bit of a separation, but there is not a separation in interest or intent. It's just a matter of getting there, having the understanding of what needs to be done, and having the content. So when there was that bifurcation and people were either doing it or not doing it, those that are not doing it want to be doing it. And my tip for them, and I hope this doesn't spoil anything, but the easiest way, in my opinion, to get going is to open up that conversation with your marketing team, take the kind of campaigns that they're running, flip them over to the post-sale side of the business, and start running similar ones. A lot of the content can be the same. You obviously want to change that up and update it, but the same kind of logic that is used from marketing to sales to close a deal down that funnel, it's another funnel on the other side. You've got tools, systems, and you've got people who are experts at running programs. Just borrow them for a little bit for now to at least get yourselves on your feet.
Yeah. I think that's excellent advice. And you'll find that those tactics benefit almost every customer segment you have. From the enterprise to the small businesses that you may be working with. You can use these digital strategies to enhance the overall experience and the customer journey that you provide someone. So I think that is a critical change in the thinking behind digital strategies that I hope everyone goes away with.
Absolutely. And that is the change that we are seeing, is even in the organizations that have a good, strong digital strategy, moving that digital strategy up market, I guess you could say, into the enterprise space, where you do have a sometimes dedicated one CSM to an account in a very large enterprise logo, is supporting that with digital. And that's critical because, again, when you think about sales and B2B buyers do most of their buying digitally, you really wouldn't say, okay, we're going to let this large, huge B2B company buy our product without ever speaking to a person. I mean, ChatGPT might have something else to say, but my point is that same kind of touch and attention that you put before sale, all of the same principles, although executed slightly differently, they all apply.
All right. On that theme, we want to talk about a couple of things. Tony and I will go back and forth here about digital strategies that we hope you can start employing right away. One is around how to automate communication, what the right type of communication to automate is. And the other is around forecasting risk and understanding ways to do this effectively so that it benefits both you and your customers. Let's jump into the first one here. All right, so automating communication where possible. Tony mentioned ChatGPT a minute ago. I don't know that we're all quite there yet, but and no, you are welcome to go to the next slide there, Tony, because if we look at what what this automation has done for the B2C world, mentioned Domino's earlier. Fun fact is that FedEx, as far as I know, invented the tracking code system. So the FedEx founder comes out in the 70s and says, one day the information about the package will be just as important as the package itself. And that taps into something that happens in our brains when we purchase something, but we don't have it yet, or even frankly, just when we're anticipating something, when we know that something is coming, but we haven't experienced it yet. And what happens is this phenomenon called prospection, where you start to build out in your mind this mental model or vision of what you're about to experience, whether you're going on a vacation or about to receive something in the mail. And so what has happened, from FedEx all the way up until now, Amazon takes a photo of packages on my doorstep to make sure that I know that it's there. Is that companies in the B2C space have found ways to automate certain types of communication so that you don't have to call them, so you don't have to reach out. And what this does is it provides kind of an antidote to anxiety, if you will, right? I don't have to reach out and ask where my package is because I was just told. I know exactly where it is. That doesn't always mean that it's good news. Sometimes, Tony, have you ever had a package not arrive on time from Amazon?
Oh yeah,
Sure you have. Are you still shopping with Amazon?
absolutely.
You are, yes. So I think there's something in there that we'll get to a little more later, but the power of automation also in the B2B world, and you can probably hop to the next slide here, in the B2B world will help alleviate bandwidth for teams. So you can automate there are certain things that a computer can do and should do, right? Automating, so in Guide, for example, automating things like task assignments, sending out the right instructions and maybe attachment package to the right people, passing of the baton. So, hey, Tony's done with his task. Now Harris needs to be alerted that it's time for him to get working on his. Maybe even weekly status updates, right? So Guide will send out hey, this is what happened this week in the project. Here are the tasks that were completed. Here's what's coming next. And what that does is it helps your people that are working with your customers kind of up level their types of engagement, right? If you're not spending hours every week putting together status updates or kind of herding cats is an unfortunate cliche in the project management world. But if you're not doing that, then you've got much more time to put together thoughtful kind of notes on the recap on, hey, team, let's celebrate these wins. Here's where we did really well. Here are the risks I see. Here's what we need to focus on. So finding ways to kind of alleviate pressure by automating certain types of communication, it can really make a big difference there. Tony, I know you got a little bit to add there around what you see with kind of, just alleviating that bandwidth and up-leveling the way the team's able to interact with customers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, by automating those tasks and taking some of that administrative burden off of the shoulders of your people, it opens them up to spend more time with customers on the things that really can't or shouldn't necessarily be automated. So if you think of something like escalations or changes in scope, just really being able to dedicate their time to the things that are driving value, right? So talking about how are we going to get to that point that you are receiving what you intended from this product. So it's not always going to be things like escalations, but you want to make sure that your people are focused on activities that drive value. And while these digital activities absolutely do drive value because they get you to that end goal, your people need to be able to pivot, right?
Yes.
So being able to support them with those things that are recurring tasks really helps. But I'll tell you from my time as a CSM and my time, in implementations, it's also going to make your people happier too, right? You're pulling them out of some of that minutia.
Yep. Well, I want to tie into the value conversation we had at the beginning of this webinar, right? The different what is value is it could be different for different audiences at your customer. And so some of the bandwidth increase that you can have from automating communication can go towards making sure that you've got the right value path moving for each persona that you're working with, right? Tony mentioned minutia. It's hard to get into some of those higher level activities when you're trying to manage due dates and follow-ups and just getting the right information, the right person, or reminders and things like that.
And just like removing that black box, right? Like I think, to your point with the slide of with the different images of trackers and things, is like just having some visibility. And by using digital and having a tool like GUIDEcx that is able to actually give you some of that insight and visibility, things are happening. I think, the worst, maybe not the worst, but when you're waiting for a flight that is continually delayed, and they just keep telling you that it's going to be, we don't know, or it's going to be 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and they're just not giving you the right kind of updates. That's a very negative experience. But if you had visibility into like what the process was, kind of opening that door a little bit makes the experience better for everybody.
Yes, it absolutely does. So I think quick takeaway here that I hope to give you some practical advice on is go through, if you can try to quantify or keep a log of the most frequent types of communication, either that your team has to do or that customers are asking for. You should be able to sit in a room with some people on your team, figure out, hey, what pieces of these can we get ahead of versus what do we need to continue to dedicate our manual efforts to. All right. Next, we're going to talk about risk and how to track it, how to understand what's coming, and the benefits of why you should be as transparent as you can with risk, which, yeah, may sound a little concerning, but I actually want to start with the quote at the bottom of this slide. There's a great book called Measure What Matters by John Dewar. Many of you may have already read it. It's this OKR framework and this idea of how to truly get the most out of your data. And one of the things that John says in the book is that transparency seeds collaboration. And I cannot emphasize enough that in onboarding, especially, this very unique part of the customer journey, what you need from your customers is collaboration. You need engagement from them. If you're not getting it, that's when the red flags start to fly. You think this customer was born with hope, right? They just went through a great sales cycle. They're excited about something. As Tony mentioned and educated us on earlier, they have this perception of the value they're going to get. You're never going to have this opportunity with them again. What you need is their engagement. And a big part of getting that engagement is forecasting, making sure that they know what's coming and that they feel comfortable with it. As you're able to forecast even an end date, right? So you can say, hey, here's when we plan to finish, but we also want to forecast that based on the current velocity, we are going to finish a few days late or a few days early, or sometimes more or less, right? Tony gave an airline example earlier that I'll piggyback off of, which is, if you're sitting on the flight and you're pushing back from the jetway and you're departing about 20 minutes late, but the captain or the pilot may get on the intercom system and say, hey, we are leaving a little bit late. And they've got kind of two options of what they can tell you, right? Either, hey, we are going to arrive late, or we're going to make up the time in the air, and so we're not going to arrive late. And what that does for the passengers on the plane is it lets them know what to expect, right? Are they going to make their connecting flight? Do they need to instead look for restaurants in the next airport and figure out where they're going to eat or where they're going to set up and get to work or take a quick nap? Or do they need to let someone know who's going to pick them up? So what I want to emphasize here is you may worry by exposing or being open and forecasting risk with your customer. You may worry that they'll be concerned about what's going to happen. But if you can provide constructive avenues of progress for them, what it does is help them adjust their expectations and manage internally how they're going to make adjustments in there. And yeah, Tony, I think, again, curious to hear from you as you're working with your customers, some of the unexpected side of what you see when you're open and vocal about risks that you anticipate.
Well, you're able to mitigate a lot quicker and a lot more easily. And also, depending on the size of the organization, there are challenges everybody's perception of risk is a little bit different, right? And there are going to be factors in there that you aren't really going to be able to measure. So if something's on track, but off track, but they are bought in, and there is a reason for that being off track, for example. But with a large organization with a lot of different implementations going at the same time, and everyone might have a different personal perception of what risk is, without having digital components in there to help you measure and understand where the implementation is in the process, you're not going to have that ability to then say, okay, well, we're going to actually jump in and escalate here, or we're going to deploy this kind of automated playbook to help bring this customer and re-engage with them as well. So I think that's super important as well, is not just the digital of driving what that activity is, what the activity of implementation is, but then being able to have risk playbooks and automated elements in place that are going to help bring that customer back on track, or notify people internally that some additional care might need to be put here. Some additional consideration might need to be put here. So I think that is super important when you're thinking about this digital piece as well, is again, not just what does the journey look like, but what happens when something is diverting from that journey.
Yeah, what does the off-road journey look like?
Yeah,
How do we get back
absolutely.
on the road? You mentioned notifications there. We've got one of my favorite little small little features in GUIDEcx that is super powerful is we have this notification when a project is running late, not just when it is late. So it could be a week into a 3-month project, but maybe not enough progress has happened. And so the project manager will get a notification saying this is now forecasted to be late. And that allows them to jump in and see what's adjustable, right? That pilot may be able to say, we're still going to arrive on time because we can make up time in the air. We can fly faster. The wind is favorable. We've got enough fuel. And your project managers need that as well. They need that advanced notice so they can jump in and say, you know what, we can shave a few days off of this task and this task. Or, I need to ask for extra help to see if this can be done faster, and to make sure that people know that if it can't, the reality is we're not going to complete this by the day that we all hope to. So again, the earlier you can get ahead of that, and the more you can provide, I love what Tony mentioned, kind of these playbooks around this is how we handle this situation. This is what we've done in the past. This is what gets other customers to value here. That all will just build confidence with your customer. And again, that transparency will garner some engagement from them, which is the right kind of engagement to have in the beginning of your process.
Yeah. And when we talk about customer journey, often customer journeys are thought of from the perception of the company, right? So
Yep.
what's the customer journey from your perspective? When we work
Yep.
with clients, we always make sure to flip that. And what is the perception that the customer is having as they go through the customer journey? And I think the most important one there is implementation, because whoever put their neck out on the line to buy this product, they are nervous, right? They want
Yep.
this to be successful. There are implications to them potentially if it is not. So when you think about risk, it is not just a risk from the company's perspective of, if this implementation doesn't go well, then they might churn when they come up for renewal in a year or two, or this is going to make them more difficult for me to work with. I mean, those are some immediate things that you might think of, is how is the company impacted by this? But forgetting that if there is risk and there is delay, and the customer might not necessarily be aware of that, but there is going to be potential pain on their side as well, it's important to think that, again, they have stake in the game as well.
Yeah. Tony, I can't remember if it was you or another friend I was talking to about this in the last couple of weeks, but going to a hotel and them telling you that your room is not ready yet.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yes, we were talking about this.
yeah. And so the example is your room's not ready, but they can see that you're traveling with your family. They reach out to let you know that it's not ready. Obviously, that's a bummer, right? You've just landed, probably had a long trip. Where are you going to go? You don't know what to do. Getting there to the hotel and then learning that would be even worse. So hotel reaches out proactively to tell you that. But then icing on the cake or cherry on top, or however you want to put it, is that hotel reaching out and saying, hey, and by the way, there's this great children's museum here at this address, or there's this great spot to eat here. We'd love to comp your meal there while you wait for us. And all of a sudden, I guess the last point I want to make here, to hopefully help people feel more comfortable forecasting and calling out these risks, is you can use them as moments to improve the relationship that you have with your customer. You
Mhm.
can use these as moments to show your customer the human side of your business and how you take care of them. And again, kind of building off that automation piece, as you're automating the things that can be automated, now your team has that bandwidth to find those things that will delight the customer, to find those things that will help them Hey, we're not going to be able to get this integration delivered on the exact day that we thought we would. But we want to deliver this training here for your team that's been asking for this. Here are the benefits that you'll get from it. We know that you'll enjoy and get value out of this. But anyway, yeah, you can use these as moments to strengthen the relationship, and not just to introduce risk into it.
Absolutely. I think that really sums up what we've been talking about, this slide.
Yeah, I think this is so important for all of us in B2B. We say B2B, but you're still working with people, right? And as we talked about earlier in the conversation, often different audiences, and you've got to consider all of them. So yeah, just don't let that B2B dynamic let you forget that you're working with people.
Yeah, we say at Valuize a lot B2U, and the U not being YOU, but to user, right? Is you are speaking to those individual users, those individual personas that do have those different needs, that are invested differently on that personal level. And so it is very important to keep that in mind. All right, so we're moving into taking a customer-centric approach to creating a tailored onboarding experience. Harris, we're kicking off into some slides from you again here.
Yes, sir. So yeah, we're going to talk about these are going to be kind of the final two things that we talk about here. The first is going to be why it matters so much to go through the experience yourself. And the second is what you can do with data, what things you can look at to measure your efficiencies. And Tony, as you go to the next slide, you can even go to one more after this. I kind of want to ask you, as you're going through this with your customers, why do you think it's so important that people experience their process for themselves? You mentioned flipping the customer journey perspective from not the business's perspective, but to the customer's perspective. What's the value of that? Why do you see people have success when they go through the experience themselves?
So when like an organization goes through the experience as the customer,
yeah,
well, it's going to build that empathy, and it's going to uncover things that you really hadn't thought about. So, and I think, an important one, and when we work with a lot of clients, is when we get to that implementation piece and we say, like, they are thinking like, holy, this better work, right? Like, because even if you look at the sales process, it's like they come in, I have a problem to solve, right? So I need to find a solution for that. Is that solution technology, or is it not technology? And that's when they get, for example, to GUIDEcx CX and say, okay, it's technology. Technology is going to help me solve that problem. But, you've got maybe some detractors in the business. We can do this thing ourselves. We can do that. But you've gotten your budget, you've gotten everything, and you're ready to go. And so you're really thinking like, okay, I've never seen this in action. Is this going to work for us?
Yeah.
Is this going to help us? Is this going to solve the problem? And you've really got that personal stake in the game, and there is nervousness and there are emotions involved in that. And then as you go through and you get into things like adoption, you've got that investment of like, all right, I think this is working. I think this is helping us. And then you get to renewal. And again, if you're putting it on the customer side, they're not really thinking, I'm in the retention phase of this, advocacy phase of the process. They're thinking of that, like, yeah, this is helping us, and I need it to continue helping us. And obviously they're thinking renewal because you're putting renewal paperwork in front of them. But they're also thinking not expansion. They're thinking, okay, so GUIDEcx CX helped me with our primary implementation for this one product line. But if they did that so well, maybe they can do that so well for this. That was kind of an edge case that we didn't really think digital would work for. So let's try that now. So making sure that you're thinking from their point of view is going to make you as an organization be more human, be more empathetic, but also think and realize things that you probably would not have considered before.
Yeah. You said a phrase there that I love, which is this better work.
Yes.
It's a reality that this is what's going through our customers' minds, right?
Yes.
As they're going through onboarding and implementation, they've just, Tony mentioned it, put their neck out on the line. They've bought this product. Their goal now is just how quickly can this get working? And can we
Yes.
solve this problem that we set out to solve? And as Tony talks about kind of building the empathy, building your own human brand with your customer, nothing will do that better than going through the experience yourself. I'm sure everyone on this webinar offers a great product. I'm sure everyone on this webinar offers a great service. But one thing that you should keep in mind is that even though you know what you offer, and you know what that process is, you probably don't know how it feels
Right.
until you go through it.
Yeah, even good story on that. At Valuize, I created a new account plan template for us, and I was like, this is like the best account plan template ever. And I used it, and it was, I was like, okay, this is good. It could use some tweaks. And then I had to do some updates to it yesterday, and I was like, this is terrible. Like the experience of updating this template was terrible. There was duplicate information. It just was not great. And so, airing my own dirty laundry here, but
Yep.
I created something that I'm the customer of, and was still like, oh yeah, this experience isn't great. So how can I expect other people to use this and adopt this if it's kind of painful to maintain? So that's
Yeah.
going all in the trash, and I'm starting
Mm.
over. Um, but but it is absolutely true. It is absolutely true.
Yeah. So as we as we get into kind of the measurement here, I think Tony brought up something important there, which is having a place where you can get some feedback. So you go through this experience, but then you try to start to measure the impact of that experience, right? So you get that human side of, hey, how did this feel and what was it like to go through? And if you go to the next slide, Tony, um, making sure that you understand kind of that that path from your different customer personas. That will help make sure that you understand those challenges best and that you can set your team up for them. Just like Tony just mentioned, an experience with a plan he built out himself for yourself, was it? Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Like going through that, then you almost immediately learn what can be improved.
Yeah.
And you said airing dirty laundry, but there's no shame in it. Every one of
No.
it, all of this is an iterative approach. I think the shame is not taking the time necessary to dig in and put yourself through the paces, because once you do, big learnings jump out to you right away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's jump into the measurements. So looking to measure results, I think a big thing, we wanted to put this slide together for you so you can have some takeaways to think about, because often a question, especially on the onboarding side, is what should we measure and how should we measure it? We're talking about going through this experience ourselves. We're talking about forecasting our risks better to our customers, trying to automate what we can, but what should we be measuring? And I think it makes sense to finish here, kind of where we started around value and everything that Tony shared with us around what is value and how do you define that. In onboarding, we talk a lot about time to value. TTV is a metric you'll see a lot. Now we're starting to see, and I'm a big supporter of it, TTFV, time to first value. And the idea there is obviously you hope that your customer is getting value over and over and over again, but what's the first bit of value that they should experience? At GUIDEcx, I'll kind of open the shades on what our first value is when we get a new customer, because we have built a onboarding software that's designed to help you onboard your customers. The first value we want to see is how soon are you able to see your customer engaging in the experience you've created for them in Guide. That is this big light bulb aha moment that says, wow, you just got kind of your first bit of value there. But there are many other points of value along the way, right? Like how long does it take you to set up your project plan and your templates? How about getting your people trained and making sure that your users are comfortable? So you can start to look at how long does it take to get to each milestone based on product, based on customer types. And this will really give you a good sense for where some bottlenecks are in the process. I don't know if you have anything to add there, Tony, for measurements.
No, I think you've really got it.
The next thing is around satisfaction. big mistake that I see some companies make is just driving for speed. And I think intellectually this makes sense, but sometimes we forget it in practice when we're operationalizing these things. You can try to drive a time to value down, 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 down. But if you're not measuring customer satisfaction as kind of a counterweight or a balance to that, you may find that now, hey, you're moving people through onboarding in 7 days or less, but they're miserable.
Right.
Your team has been motivated to just get them through, but nothing is sticking. You're throwing so much at them at once. It's like a fire hose. It's overwhelming. Don't raise your hand, but if you've ever seen or sent out an email after a kickoff call with 25 action items of things that need to get done, now you've got a deer in the headlights over on the customer side. So satisfaction, really good counterbalance to speed. Obviously, you want to get customers to speed quickly, but they also need to get there feeling comfortable and feeling like it was a great experience. And then last point I would add there is calculating cost. This is becoming more and more important in the onboarding space, is understanding what it costs you to onboard a customer. You want to be able to describe and defend and understand this with your CFO, but also with your teams and with your customers, so you know which trade-offs to make and which extra efforts should be put in to certain customers. Where do you need to go, outside of those bounds? And so understanding that cost can really help you scale up and down as needed.
Yeah, not having good onboarding processes become really expensive to serve because you have delays, you have escalations, and those just snowball. So you spend a lot of time swarming. So having the process and then having the digital to even further scale that, it's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Sure, we leave time for questions. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're at time. We've got 5 minutes here. Our last point was to leverage transparency and empathy to turn poor experiences into positive moments. I think we really covered a lot of that, but for the sake of time, I do want to jump into just our key takeaways really quickly, which we've got some in the deck as well that you had shared throughout. But don't let that B2B dynamic allow you to forget that you are talking to people. So that human first approach, making the onboarding process simple, easy, and intuitive while providing positive personal interaction. And then, that poor experience can be transformed into a positive one. You have the data, feedback, and tools to act. And I think that example that you gave of that hotel situation where you're able to say, okay, let's anticipate, let's act, and let's provide some immediate value, really, really captures that well. All right, so jumping into Q&A, I see we've got one in the chat here, or a couple in the chat here, but let's start off first. Harris, this one's for you. Harris, how do I know if my business is right sized for automation and a product like GUIDEcx COO?
Oh, great question. I think that it's going to be tricky to know, especially if you're in a small company and you're growing, figuring out, hey, when's the right time to introduce some of this automation? And I'd say that if you have an onboarding team and you are taking care of new customers and you have what I would describe as a more or less templatized approach, meaning, and think of the Pareto rule, like 80-20, this is more or less the process we take new customers through. There are some changes we may make distinct to each new customer, but we need to get everyone from here to here in that process. Then you want to start putting that in a tool that can help you get feedback as you're running through paces with customers on, okay, you just completed that project. This is how long it took you to get from here to here and here to here in that process. This is what the customer satisfaction was. This is who on your team moved the fastest, who on the customer side moved the fastest. And what that's going to do as you continue to grow is just give you really good data points. So you can review monthly and quarterly exactly what's happening with the team. I don't know if you'd add anything as far as when to know when's the right time to kind of digitize.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't think it's ever too early to do it. but having the ability to manage that digital program is a piece as well. And that kind of goes into the next question here is like, do you typically see marketing playing a role in executing digital onboarding? Or who do you recommend own digital journeys within the organization? I've got an answer here, but Harris, we've got 2 minutes, but I'm interested to hear from you as well. From a CS standpoint, I mean, obviously I see that implementation PS would really be driving and owning that implementation. What we're seeing a lot in the CS space is hiring these scale CSMs and bringing those on board that might have had an experience in marketing in the past. So they're either responsible for specific campaigns. So they might own the onboarding campaign from a digital standpoint, or they might own a renewal campaign, or they might own campaigns for a specific segment. So we're seeing a lot about that. But again, bringing that marketing blend can sometimes be helpful. But Harris, I'm interested from your perspective, what you're seeing there.
Yeah, I think the word that you said a lot that resonates with me is own. I would stress that as long as someone has the skill set to do it, I wouldn't get too worried about where they sit in the organization as long as they own it. You don't want somebody owning your digital customer strategy if they also own 99 other things. And if they're paid on and bonused on those 99 other things, and they're just doing you a favor, right? Having somebody on the customer success side working closely with marketing, or on the marketing side who's dedicated, or at least a main function of their role is helping build out this digital approach for customers is really what you want. I think as long as you have ownership, that's my quick answer, then you should be okay.
Yeah. And we've got one last question, which is almost like a post icebreaker. What is your favorite thing about your job? I'll say honestly, having conversations like this, whether they're on webinars or with other thought leaders, this I really enjoy it. Always something exciting and new to talk about. So Harris, what about you?
Yeah, I'd say the people, both the guides that I get to work with every day here, who I'm constantly learning from and amazed by, how they take care of our customers, and also our customers and partners, like getting to work with people like Valuize, getting to work with some of the customers we have, people who are truly passionate about creating great customer experiences and know that that's what good business is about. I think that's been the most fun thing for me about GUIDEcx.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We're right on time. Really appreciate you joining. All right. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Tony. Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Harris.